Hello my friends and welcome back to another video. Today is going to be the best books I read in 2024. I have 10 books and 2 honorable mentions. This was very hard because I had a terrible reading year and a lot of the books I read this year I didn't absolutely adore. So it took me a while to think about what books I wanted to put on this list. So I'll go through the honorable mentions first, then we'll work our way from the book in the 10th spot all the way to my #1 favorite of 2024. So for honorable mentions, the first one I have is Such a Lovely Skin. I thought this was a very intriguing and unique YA horror. I gave it 4.5 stars. I had a blast with this one. I thought it was really cool that it was about a doppelganger just because I don't see that done in a lot of books. And yeah, I thought it was well done. It was fun. It was entertaining. It had a bit of humor. There was a bit of romance in it. I just had a really good time while reading this one. I don't think it's gotten a lot of hype this year. I think more people should be talking about this one. The second book in my honorable mentions is one that I just finished, and it's Sally's Lament, which is one of those twisted tale Disney books, and it's basically what if Sally had discovered Christmas Town instead of Jack. And I don't know what it is, but The Pumpkin Queen and this one, both books that I've read from Sally's perspective, I just absolutely adored. Sally is one of my favorite characters. I just love getting to see things through her eyes and getting more of her. This one felt so similar to the movie. It felt so close. I would have loved this to be a movie, honestly. Like, they should make this a movie because I would love to see the movie from Sally's point of view and have her be the main character. I just had a great time with this one. It made me tear up. It was fun. It was nostalgic, and I just had a blast while reading it. All right, let's start the list with book number 10, and that is When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. This is such a cool book about a big topic that is important, which is gentrification. This book is about our main character, Sydney, who is noticing a change in her Brooklyn neighborhood. She starts noticing all these for sale signs popping up and more families moving in, but they are white families, and a lot of the black families or black neighbors that she knows are disappearing and she doesn't know where they're going. She feels like people are losing the history of the neighborhood, so she starts up a walking tour, and one of the new guys that has just recently moved into the neighborhood, he becomes her kind of like helper, and he starts working with her on the tour guide. This was fascinating. One, because it just is about a topic that I think is something that, especially in the last few years, we've seen a lot about and people talking about. Gentrification is kind of huge at the moment, and it has been. And the second reason is it's not what I expected going into it. A lot of people claim this is a thriller. It's even stated on the book that it's a thriller. This is definitely more of a horror in my opinion. I think it leans way more horror. It definitely has those Get Out vibes, so if you really like the movie Get Out, I think you would probably enjoy this book. It was just so entertaining, so fast-paced. I love the characters. The story is very gripping. The only issue I had with it is that I felt like the ending got a little confusing. It was so fast-paced and quick, and I was like, I don't know what's happening, there are too many things, and I would get confused because I was just trying to keep up with everything that was happening. But other than that, it was so well done and such a fun book to read. Coming in at number 9 is one that I just recently read, and that is The Night Guest. This is a little novella, a little horror novella. It's very quick, very fast to read. I read it in one sitting. I could not take my eyes from this book. I was glued to these pages. In this book, we have our main character. She wakes up and she just can't use her body. She's so tired. She's not waking up refreshed, and all the doctors she's going to are like, there's nothing wrong with you, we can't find anything, there's no explanations for any of her symptoms. So she decides to invest in a smartwatch, and when she wears it to sleep and wakes up the next morning, she finds out that she walked over 40,000 steps in her sleep. This is wild. It's not what I thought it was gonna be at all. It was bizarre, but in the best way. It is just a tiny little package of weird, and I was so intrigued. I feel like I really related to the main character, especially in the first half, not as much in the second half, but in the first half, definitely I felt like I could relate to her struggles of how she felt trying to figure out what's going on with her. I've definitely been in that position before, and I was kind of like laughing at some of the things she did. I would just kind of laugh and be like, been there, done that. So it was kind of like humorous in a way for me because I could relate to this character at times. And then it just gets really unhinged and really weird, really bizarre, really crazy. The only thing that stops this from being like a perfect novella for me is the ending. I wanted a little bit more from the ending just in terms of like answers. I feel like it left me hanging and I don't quite know what I read at the end. I was kind of like, I feel like this is a one where you could have multiple theories for what really like happened and went down and what occurred throughout the whole novella. So, I mean, not my favorite type of ending, but the experience was so fun and like I said, could not stop reading it, that I just think it was such a standout for my year. Another shorter horror that I think was a very big standout for me. I still think about this book. I will have it just creep into my thoughts when I'm not expecting it, and that is Where I End by Sophie White. It's very short. It's also a very, very quick read. It's very dark. This is very, very dark. I didn't know how dark it was going to be. Like, I like dark and disturbing, but I was reading this and I was like, I don't see the dark. I don't see the disturbing. You all lied to me. You all said it was all messed up and it's not here. And then as soon as you hit it, you're like, oh, never mind. I found it. It was a lot more than I expected it to be, but it's just one of those books where I feel like it wiggles into your brain and it doesn't leave. In our story, this main character is basically not really liked. She doesn't have friends and people think she's like cursed, and she lives on this little isle off of the Scotland coast, so it's not like she can find new people to, you know, get to know. But a new woman does show up and she's very nice to our main character because she doesn't really know anything about her, and she doesn't know that her mother is like bedridden and she's, you know, got some things going on at home, so she treats her very, you know, normally as people would if they didn't know that the entire place thinks she's cursed. And, you know, they start having a friendship and she starts, you know, hanging around. It makes it sound so tame when you put it like that, but this book is so messed up. I know so many people are not going to like this because it covers subject matter that is very dark and that people are probably not going to read, but my jaw dropped when things started rolling. I was like, oh, whoa, here we go. I was waiting for it and then here it is. So I can't stop thinking about this book. I think it was very well done. I do wish it was a little bit longer because I feel like I wanted to see a little bit more at the end. I feel like it could have gone a little bit further and I would have really, really liked it, and I would have, you know, probably gave this 5 stars, but it did get 4.5 for me because it was just such, I was gonna say fun, but it's not really fun. It's just a wild read. Speaking of wild reads, book number 7 is The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. I feel like this one will probably make it on to a lot of people's best of lists. This was very hyped up in the horror community. I can see why, because I had the best time while reading this book. I did give this one 5 stars. The social commentary in this book is interlaced so well with the horror because they are both so horrific in this book, but they weave so nicely together and it makes for such an impactful, punchy book. And I couldn't stop reading this one. I read it so quickly. It's a very fast read. It's not very long. And once you get going with this one, it's hard to put it down. So in this book, we are following a Korean American college freshman whose dad has recently just left the family because he was having an affair. And her mom is obviously distraught and just like beyond help at this point. She is very upset, but she meets a new man and he is white, and our main character becomes fascinated with his blue eyes and starts having dreams about them, and things just become unhinged. And honestly, this is definitely like one of those good for her horror books. If you love a good for her story, I think you will really like this. And you know, you can't look at eyeballs the same way once you've read this book. I know I can't. Eyeballs are, they're prominent to the story. You're gonna have a lot about eyeballs in this one, so be prepared if you do decide to pick it up. Number 6 is The Hollow Dead by Darcy Coates. This is book number 4 in the Gravekeeper series. I have absolutely adored and enjoyed every single second of this series. Book number 5, which is the last book, is coming out in February of 2025. I am so heartbroken that the series will be over. Darcy Coates is one of my favorite authors, but this series has just been such a pleasure to read. I loved the first book. I gave it 4 stars, but every book after has just gotten better and better. This one is no exception. I gave it 5 stars. I just love these characters so much. She writes the sweetest characters sometimes, where you just cannot help but love them and root for them. And in horror, that is hard sometimes because characters aren't always likable. You're not meant to like every character you read in a horror book. But with these books, the characters are so just adorable, and their friendship is adorable, and you just want everything to go right for them. You want everything to work out, and main character can see ghosts, but there is so much more going on to this story, and I think we're finally, you know, getting answers each book, and just a little bit more is revealed each time. And I just have such a good time while reading this. I loved this one. What can I say? Number 5 is a cozy mystery, and that is In the Company of Witches by Oralee Wallace. I read this as my first read of October. It was the perfect start to my favorite month, and it was just the coziest, sweetest, witchiest, emotional book I've ever read. This book made me cry. I literally sobbed while reading it, and I'm a baby. I know I cry at a lot of books, but this one I wasn't expecting it. Like a cozy little mystery. What could make me cry about that? This is about our main character, Bryn, who is a witch. She's also grieving the loss of her husband, and she hasn't been able to use her powers since he passed away. She lives with her 2 aunts who also run this B&B, this bed and breakfast. They're also witches, and one of her aunts gets accused of a murder because one of the guests in their B&B ends up dying under mysterious circumstances. So Bryn sets out to prove that her aunt is innocent and not use her powers to do it, so she's doing it like the old-fashioned way, you know? If you love reading books that you can really see in your head and it's described so well and the atmosphere is so well done that like you feel like you're in the book, I feel like this is a book for you. Like you want a cozy mystery, a cozy witchy mystery, but with like a heart, but also takes place during like the Halloween fall time, and you want to like be immersed into that feeling. You're gonna get it from this one, and you may or may not cry at the end. I can't guarantee that because if you're not a crier, you might not cry, but I did cry at the end of this book because it was just so heartbreakingly beautiful but sad. Oh my god. It was just such a fun little cozy mystery, and I highly recommend it. It was just the perfect start to my October. Book number 4 is The Mysterious Case of the Alperton Angels by Janice Hallett. I absolutely adore Janice Hallett. I have loved everything besides the Twyford Code that this author has written. I've had a blast. I love the formatting of her books. If you love books where you get to like read emails and instant messages and like interviews and stuff like that, like you just love that kind of thing, you're gonna love Janice Hallett. But you want like a fun mystery, Janice Hallett is your author to check out. I have loved most of her books, like I said, but this one was crazy wild. Like the twists and the turns, the direction it went, it got so dark at times in this one. And like, you know, mysteries can get dark, but this is like dark. Like this almost felt like horror at times. I was like, whoa, where are we going with this story? What is happening? This book is about a cult that convinces this teenage girl that her baby is the Antichrist, and when, you know, the cult's revealed and police get involved, they kill themselves, and the teenage girl and the baby disappeared. So in the present day, this woman named Amanda, she is a true crime writer, and she's looking for a story to kind of help her career. She needs to like get it back into action. She feels like she's, you know, petering off. She needs to like get her status back up. So she's going to look for this baby because the baby has turned 18. So she's like, that's what I'm gonna do. But there's a rival author named Oliver who is about to do the same thing, and she's like, this is my story. They end up having to work together though. This had me flabbergasted. I was sick while reading this book. I don't typically read a lot when I'm sick because I just usually don't have the energy to read when I get sick, and this book, I could not put it down. I was reading this when I had a fever. I was on my deathbed and I'm, you know, like hallucinating basically, but I'm like, yeah, I gotta keep on reading because this is crazy. Like, this is crazy. That's how dedicated I was to finishing this book. That's how much I was into it. That's how much I had to know what was going on and how much I couldn't put it down. I was literally sick, feverish, while reading this one. If that doesn't sell you on this book, I don't know what will, because this was excellent. Definitely my favorite Janice Hallett by far. It was the ending. I still think about this book though, because it was crazy. It was so wild. I just had such a good time while reading it, even while being sick. Now for book number 3. This one is very different than my other books so far, and it's because this became such a big part of my life this year, and it was such a highlight of this year, and that is Star Wars. I started reading Star Wars books this year. I just was like really watching the movies when my mental health was at like an all-time low, and this book, it's just one of my favorites now of all time, and that is Brotherhood by Mike Chen. I am a prequel girly through and through. I love the Star Wars prequels so much. I love Anakin. I love Padme. I love the prequels, okay? I love the originals. I do like the sequels as well, but the prequels are my favorite. It's probably because I'm a millennial. I don't know. Who knows? But I love them. And so when I saw there was a book that was taking place during the Clone Wars time, and it's about Anakin and Obi-Wan, I knew I had to read it. I was like, well, I need it because Anakin's my favorite character, okay? I love Anakin. I love Padme and Anakin, and you do get to see Anakin and Padme interact in this book, and it was very sweet and very cute. You definitely get more of Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship in this one a lot too, and I think that is really helpful to kind of see it. If you've watched the Clone Wars show, I think that you like understand what I'm talking about, but it was just so beautiful getting even more of that in like a book form. I loved the ending. It was kind of like emotional for me too. I don't know if it was me being able to read about these characters for the first time, like just like be immersed into it in a reading experience, because I hadn't had that yet. I had only had Clone Wars the show and then of course the movies to see them interact. So getting like a more in depth and just getting more time with these characters was so exciting for me, and I just had like such a good time, and it was like the easiest 5 stars, obviously. Like, I loved it. I just think if you're someone who wants more of these characters, this book is definitely going to be one that you really enjoy. Book number 2 is another mystery, and that is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. Now, this is probably not everyone's cup of tea. I know that this is definitely written in a very unique way, and I can definitely see why some people hate this book. When I started reading it, I didn't think it was going to work for me because it's very different, and I don't know how else to put it. It's a very fresh take on a mystery. The way it's written is not like other mysteries that you're going to find. I think that would turn a lot of people off. It did at first for me. Like I said, like I was not into it, but the more I kept reading, I fell in love. And this is about our main character, Ernie. He is kind of like an expert in crime fiction, and several years ago he witnessed his brother kill someone, and he turned him in, and his brother went to jail. But now, years later, his family is having a family reunion because his brother's getting out of jail and they want to welcome him home. Their reunion is taking place at a isolated mountain resort, and a day before his brother is supposed to arrive, a man is found dead. So he takes it upon himself to, you know, use his expertise to figure out who did it. The way that you're reading this from Ernie's perspective is so different than a typical mystery. There's a lot of like comedic tones to this story as well, but the way that this author hides things, and that's gonna sound so bizarre, but it's almost like you're not really seeing the full picture, even though you actually are, you're just not paying attention correctly. Like, that's how it felt. It felt like the author was giving me all the information, but the way it's delivered, I was not able to see it all. And so when things are revealed, I'm like, oh my god, okay. So like, I was getting whipped back and forth. Like, I really thought I had it solved at times. I was like, okay, wait a second. Based off of what just happened, it should be this, this, and this, and this. And then the next chapter would happen and I'd be like, oh, okay, I have nothing to go on now. I have literally no idea what's happening. It's such a fresh take on a mystery. It's not boring. I think if you get bored with mysteries a lot because it's the same kind of book over and over again, like, and that's fun most of the time. I really enjoy mysteries, even if they can be predictable at times, because I don't know, they're just a good time. This one is probably going to take you by surprise because it's not the same. It's just so different from a very typical average mystery novel. And I think that's why it worked so well. I mean, by the end, I was like, well, I would have never figured this out. There's no way. Like, even if I had had all the information, because of the way it's told, I would never guess any of it. And I loved that. As someone who loves to be surprised, this surprised me at every turn and I could not get enough. I do have the sequel to this book and I haven't read it yet, but I am looking forward to it because I just think it was such a great experience, and I would love to read more mysteries do things like this. My number one book of 2024 is probably going to shock a lot of you because it's kind of random. Well, it's not random if you know me, but it's a little bit different than all the other books. And I know that this book doesn't have the best reputation compared to the other books in the series, which I am super upset about, but it's okay. Some people just don't like this book, but I've read it twice this year. I read it once in August and then I read it again in November, and that is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This is part of the Hunger Games series. This is a prequel. In this one, you are following Coriolanus Snow, who is President Snow in the trilogy, and this is during the 10th annual Hunger Games. I mean, I think Suzanne Collins is a genius. I do. Every time I reread the Hunger Games, I am blown away by her mastery. So much detail into her stories, and every time I read it, I find something new. I can look at it with fresh eyes and just experience even more of the story. There is a reason for everything in these books. It's just so beautifully done. The Hunger Games is my favorite book series of all time. It's probably just like my favorite book in general. Like, all of them are just like my favorite book. I have been obsessed with the Hunger Games since they came out, and I had been putting off this book because I was scared by reviews that it wasn't going to be as good as the original trilogy, but I loved this. I think it was so intelligent to do a book from Snow's perspective. I think it was shocking. I don't think a lot of people were expecting it, and I think they weren't expecting what this book was. And you are seeing the Hunger Games from the other side. You're seeing what it's like for the people working the Hunger Games, right? You're getting to see the mentor side because he is a mentor of the games, and his tribute is Lucy Gray Baird, and she's a District 12 girl. Seeing the games from a mentor perspective was very interesting because we've only seen them from a tribute's perspective in the games, actually participating in the games. So seeing someone participate on the other side, I think it gives you a better understanding of the games. I think it gave you such a better understanding of Snow and the Snow you know in the trilogy, the president, and what he does, and, you know, the acts that he commits. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think seeing his progression and seeing his character change was so necessary for the series. I know a lot of people don't agree. I know a lot of people were disappointed having Snow as the main character, but I think he is a fascinating character, and I love the way Suzanne Collins had his character develop. I thought it makes the trilogy even better reading this and then reading the 3 books after it. It just gives you so much perspective, and there is just so much to analyze in this one that helps you with the trilogy and understanding other pieces of the books. I cannot wait for the 5th book coming out in March, Sunrise on the Reaping, which will be about Haymitch and the Second Quarter Quell, or the 50th Hunger Games. I am so excited about that. It's like my most anticipated release of 2025. You learn so much, but not at one time. You're learning it while the characters are developing, and it just makes for a really impactful book. I loved every second of it. Like I said, I read it twice this year, annotated it. I love this book. I love this series. Suzanne Collins is a genius, which is why this is my #1 book of 2024. All right, friends, that is it. 2024 is done. I cannot believe it. I hope 2025 is better because I had a crappy year of reading and I would like it to improve in 2025. Please let me know your favorite books of the year. I would love, love, love to know. If we have any that are the same, I would also love to know. If you love these kinds of videos, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. That way I know. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe to my channel. We can become friends, talk about books, horrifying books, thrilling books, romance books, manga, all that good fun stuff. And with that being said, I hope you are having a great day, night, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!